I'm destroying this terrarium, not because I hate it, but because I've got a better idea. I want to build some sort of jungle temple and then combine it with old plants from this terrarium to create an ancient mini world. So I've saved all the plants that used to live inside for later on in the new setup. But before I can use them, I need to make the actual temple ruins itself, and I'll be using the old lid from the bowl to build the frame on so I know it will definitely fit through the top of the bowl. Using aluminium wire, I've made the rough shape I wanted, and I can now cover this with tinfoil on top to fill out the gaps. I'm cutting a hole in the left side of a Stanley knife where I want an entrance to be. I can now roll out some super Sculpey modelling clay so I can cut it out and add it on top of the tinfoil. I'm going to keep going until every side is covered with the clay, and I'll then use this sculpting tool to blend all the pieces together. Out of aluminium wire, I can also create a quick staircase, and it can then be baked in the oven for 15 minutes at 140 degrees Celsius. I'm now going to repeat the steps to start work on a mini totem pole that will go alongside the staircase. After rolling the cylinder out flat, I started to add mini shapes and features to start making a face at the top. This was a super fun process, and by the end I have quite an aggressive but stylistic looking totem pole that will hopefully watch guard over the temple in this terrarium. Under the face and on the back, I'm adding more lines and shapes to fill it out with patterns. The end result, I think, was quite effective. The plan was to slot this guy in next to the staircase and this large piece of Serrier stone. But before that, I needed to complete the staircase, which I did by adding on more mini pieces of clay onto the wire. After this, I cut the clay up into brick shapes and layered them all over the existing structure to give it more texture. I also added this mini altar into the entrance tunnel that I could perhaps place something precious on later. After another bake in the oven, I gave both pieces another bake and a spray down with white primer. I then left them to dry for a few hours. I can now start painting, and although this grey looks the same colour as the clay before, I promise it will make a difference when we start to add the details. The altar in the tunnel I'll be painting golden as it will be holding a valuable treasure. I also added some lighter grey to detail the outside. Originally, I started painting the totem pole with colour, however I decided he was looking questionable, so I decided to wash him off in the paint water and wipe the paint off. Instead, I went for another shade of grey to match the rest of it. I then used SuperGlue and tissue to attach the base of the totem pole next to the Serrier stone. I also glued this crystal onto the podium in the tunnel, however, I decided that the gold was clashing, so I covered it with SuperGlue and Coco Coir. It's now time to start work on the terrarium, and first I need to add a drainage layer to stop excess water from sitting inside of the substrate. On top of this, I can add window screen mesh as a substrate barrier, and then a thin layer of actual substrate for which the recipe will be in the description. I can now place in the temple along with the Serrier stone and some more hardscape like these pieces of driftwood. I can see the vision starting to take shape now, and I'm happy with how the model fits in the bowl. Slowly, I'll start to bring back in the plants from the previous terrarium, like the piece of moss with the Fittonia already rooted inside. This Nephrolepis fern can also slot into the back, along with this Paulownia repens to fill in the gap between the two. This purple passion plant can slot into the back, and I'll trim off a few of its leaves so that it better fits into the area. A number of the old plants can also slot into this raised section at the back, including some more Fittonia and another Paulownia cutting. Here's some more moss from the previous terrarium. The nice thing about recycling the moss like this is that the plants are already so well established inside of it that they have something to anchor them down and help them settle in. This plant here, often called peacock moss, is one of my favourites as it helps create an overgrown jungly feel. You can see me adding some extra moss onto the totem pole's head and also the top of the tunnel. To add some better colour contrast, I'm going to top the substrate at the front with sand to create a mini beach. I wanted the terrarium to feel like a dense jungle, so I'm going to add a bunch of sticks to act like trees growing up from the jungle floor. I'll also add a variety of thicknesses to create some variation. Here's a cutting from one of my favourite plants, a begonia pink spot, to go in front of the tunnel. These peperomia propagate from just their leaves, so in time these should start to create some new growth. Finally, I'll add a path down the centre of the sand and some pebbles around the edge with a final Ficus quercifolia cutting onto the moss on the right. I can now give the whole terrarium a spray down with deionised water, being careful not to add too much, and also some springtails to sort out any mould that may grow on the wood. I'm super happy with how this turned out, and it feels like a mini slice of the jungle captured inside the bowl. I think the clay temple has really blended into its surroundings, helping to tell the story of this lost world. Click on this video next to see me make a mini hobbit hole terrarium inside of a glass vase.